Our special guest tonight, Professor Aly El-Shafei from Cairo University. And before we go through the impressive biography of Professor Ali, I want to say a few words. I first met Professor Ali about 10 years ago in his undergraduate mechanical vibrations class. And I can tell you this, Professor Ali was always a source of inspiration to a lot of his students, and really the interactions between him and many of the undergraduate and graduate students who worked with him played a big role in shaping what they become and what they did after school. And I'm proud to be one of those students. Professor Ali is a professor of mechanical engineering and former chair of the Department of Mechanical Design and Production Engineering at Cairo University. He is the founder and first executive director of the Science and Technology Development Fund, STDF, which is the prime governmental scientific research funding agency in Egypt. We will hear a lot about that more in the presentation. He previously worked as the Assistant Minister for Technology Development in the Ministry of Scientific Research at the Egyptian government, where he foresaw the efforts to restructure science governance in Egypt. Professor El-Shafei is well known as a scientist in the field of Rotordynamics and Machinery Diagnostics. He chairs the ISO committee on developing international standards for machinery diagnostics. He is a practicing diagnostics engineer, category 4 certification. Dr. El-Shafei received his Ph.D. from MIT in 1988, has held positions as Assistant Professor of Mechanical Engineering at the University of South Florida in Tampa, Florida, and as Group Technical Director at Ezz Industrial Group in Egypt, and as Managing Director of RITEC. So today, Professor Ali will talk to us about restructuring science and technology governance in developing countries, with Egypt as a case study. After the talk, we'll open the floor for questions. So with that, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Professor Ali.
I remember Mustafa. Thank you, Mustafa, for the kind words. Mustafa was in my class, and I have a strange habit. The final exam, out of 100, I put 120 marks in the paper. Mustafa got the full 120 marks, but the limit I have was 100. So I had to get from 100, while the next student got 98. The difference is not 2 points. It's 2 points. I had to do so. So I remember that, although it is 10 years ago, I have many hats. I'm talking about one of the hats as a government official in trying to restructure science and technology in Egypt. There was an effort in about 2006, 2007 to restructure science and technology. I'm going to tell you what we went through, what were our successes, and where we missed the boat. And this is important for anybody who wants to restructure science and technology anywhere in the world. There are a lot of common problems with science and technology in developing countries. If I can get that slide, I can tell you there is a lack of funding, lack of political involvement, lack of political support, problems with human resources. In some countries there is a lack of human resources, not so in Egypt. And the big problem in most countries, even in some countries in the West, is how to get innovation out of the lab to the economy, and a product at the end of the day. So most developing countries share the same problems in science governance. And what you need is to have a mechanism for science support to support the economy. In short, in most developing countries, the real problem is the lack of the ecosystem conducive for science and technology and innovation field. Egypt is not different. It has somewhat unique features, and I'll tell you about. There are some core competencies that can be exploited, and we try to exploit those. And in many ways, we did succeed. We were caught by an unforeseen event, which is the 2011 revolution. My big advice for anybody who wants to try to restructure: don't restructure before the revolution. So this is the but anyway, I'll tell you what we went through. Some work continues to this day, and that I think that's a success. That some of the restructuring continues, but some of the work has been undone, which is also a feature of developing countries. Okay, so it works now. Okay. This is UNESCO Science Report 2005, which is one of the reports that we use to base our analysis for the restructuring. Science report comes out from UNESCO once every 5 years. So there is a 2010, next year 2015, and so on. Look at the data. This is, I'm using 2005 for two reasons. These are the data that we used to build our restructuring effort on. And the other is, in 2010, they didn't do it that same way. You will also understand. You can see clearly the number of full-time equivalent researchers. Egypt by far and Arab world is the largest. Iraq even is worse now. This is one of the advantages that we have in Egypt. Those of you who come from Egypt here are an example of it. Number of R&D units, this means research centers, universities, what have you, much larger than Egypt. That can be an advantage, a blessing, or can be a misfortune, depends on what they produce. But I'll take it at this point that it is an advantage. But you can see the gross expenditures for research and development per full-time equivalent researcher in some Arab countries, and you can see that funding in Egypt is low, even with Arab standards. So this was a clear problem when we started. There was a lack of funding mechanisms. They didn't put the number of papers published, but actually Egypt has been doing well in paper publishing, getting papers out, cited papers. I'll show you some data in a moment. But as far as getting patents out, small number, even Saudi Arabia is a lot better than we did. We identified a cycle, we call it an innovation cycle, where that people doing work in the lab, they publish papers. people doing applied research, they get patents. But then you need to have prototypes and technology development. This is the next step. And you have this valley where technology dies. We already have a problem from 2,000 some papers to 22 patents. So this is a big, big number. I'll show you the numbers. And then even the valley, we don't even have any record of a product that is based on scientific research in Egypt. And there are companies that are science-based, nothing that's based on scientific research. So there has to be a mechanism to move forward from the lab to at least a prototype, and further on look at possibilities for product development. 4 stages product development, and you can measure that. Actually, we found a nice thing. In the first stage, you can measure by papers. Second stage by patent. Third stage by prototypes. Fourth stage by products. And they are all P's, so we go with a 4P cycle. This is just this is student enrollment in higher education. We have 22. This is interesting. It's just interesting. 22, about a quarter of our population go to universities. More boys than girls. Maybe they have equal numbers. It's strange. A place like Qatar, where is Qatar? 15% of boys, 46% of girls go to college. These are all different reasons, but it is intriguing. Essentially, the girls want to leave home. Essentially, that's it. And the boys, daddy owns it first. Why go to college? There's also the Emirates, same thing. So anyway, there are different. You can see that from the numbers. You can see them from graphics. What's going on? Strange anomaly: 44% of the researchers work in agriculture. Number of researchers in the Arab region: 44%, mostly Egypt, by the way. So this is something that can be an advantage. Another thing, when we look deeper, even though that we produce 0.2% of the scientific publications in the world from Egypt, that actually in the field of chemistry we produce 6% of the scientific publications in chemistry. There are many reasons for that. But I believe it is historical from the date when we used to produce chemical weapons in Egypt a long time ago, and that culture continued to increase. I think that's the reason. This is just a conjecture. Having shown you the numbers of Egypt with respect to the other countries, other Arab countries, but you have to realize that Arab countries and African countries are on the bottom of the scale across expenses on research and development. So even though we may have a favorable position within the Arab world, the whole thing is at the bottom of the scale. And research of the inhabitants, again, we're at the bottom. Japan, with all of the Arab states on here. So we have a problem, we realize this, and we need to work on moving forward. This is movies, and this is UNESCO Science Report 2010. And this compares the number of papers, cited papers produced from Egypt, 2000, or these countries, 2000 to 2008. So we were at 2,300 in 2000 and 3,900 in 2020. We actually moved a little bit forward, and we have kept that going at 0.2%, but these numbers, 3,900 is at 0.3% of the total scientific publications. But what is impressive is Tunisia, actually. They moved from 540 to 2,000. And when you see numbers like that, you will know that this is a government decision. This is, they changed their policies. I will show you the same thing for Iran and Turkey. A clear decision on how they move forward. In 2000, Tunisia will be down here somewhere, but keep second to Egypt, and you have to keep in mind, Egypt is an 87 million people country, and Tunisia is what, 5, 6, something like that. So it's a small country. Okay, so UNESCO Science Report 2010, patents from US Patent Office, 2003 and 2008. And you can see we're talking about, remember the numbers, 2,000, 4,000, and we get 6 and 2. So there's no connection between what's going on in the lab and getting intellectual property out. So this is the key problem. And this is NSF report 2008. We were a number of papers against 42%. Here, in 95 we were doing 1388, 42% of the total. And 2005 we were doing 16. And if you look at Turkey, they went from 1,700 to 7,800. I think the decision of the government. If you look at Iran, it went from 279, no match to us in 1995. We were 1388 and 279. 2635, more than what we had in 2005. And if you look even further, this is 2014 science indicators report from NSF. That's Egypt, 2001, 1563, 2011, 2550, 43%. Again, look at Iran, 1,055, 8,076. But Iran is impressive, and this shows clear decision from the government on building the technologies. Obviously, we all know that they want to develop nuclear technology, but in order to do so, they have to develop from the beginning basic sciences and to develop the whole culture. You cannot build technology in one area only or science in one area only. You have to build the ecosystem. So, a few efforts, we started doing a few things. At the beginning it was initiatives, but I will go into the details of the plan. We realized that we need to advance in our S&T applications. We're talking 2006, 2007 timeframe. And I headed the group preparing the new S&T plan. And at the same time, the minister announced Science Decade. And this is actually a private day. The Science Decade, 10 years of doing science, we used it well. Every year we would have a science year of a certain country. A lot of activities, cooperation in many ways. 2007 was in German science year. By the way, it was one of the best first for the Germans. Perhaps we were lucky that we worked with the Germans. But I remember the United States was 2011, and it never materialized because of the revolution. And we had big plans in the United States. I think that concept of the science-dedicated science here died with the revolution. People do not remember it, but it was useful. So these were the axioms that Egypt needs to develop towards the knowledge economy. Instead of looking backwards on this. We need to sustain annual growth of around 9%. We need to realize that Egypt was going by certain economic reforms in 2004-2005 timeframe. The growth was around 8% in 2007. It went down in 2008 with the world economic crisis to 5%, but it went up again to about 6% in 2010. And it was on its way to moving further. Nowadays we are working with around 2–2.5% growth. So the idea was to support 9% development, economic growth, and to help not only with economic reform but with science and and we need to apply the complete cycle of innovation to support the economy. These are the actual numbers. 98,000 scientists working in this activity, 70,000 are in universities, 15,000 working in industry, 15,000 working in research institutions. These are government work. The research institutions are government institutions. Some of them are pretty good, but most are not.
I have a question. What is the definition of scientist in Egypt? So this number, 98,000, what is meant by scientist? Teaching assistants or mu'addin, are they scientists?
Yes.
So it's not based on the one who's doing like real research, it's whoever employed in the university is a scientist.
Not only that, it is a wider definition. But we can go to details. Let me finish what I want to tell you, and we can talk about the details. There are challenges with human resources. You can see this is an example of one of our research institutions. We conducted a study of particularly research institutions. And you can see this is the age group. And you can see that this is skewed. There are a lot of older people over 55 and a lot of under 40. This age group 40 to 55, which should be the driving force, is practically non-existent. And this is common in many cases in Egypt. Older people have decided to stay there. Younger people, the Mu'ayyid is talking about, who are starting their careers. And they come at the end, most of them are here rather than staying there. But anyway, so this, okay, 40 to 55 is practically non-existent. So there are problems with human resources that need to be handled. We did a study on some of these research institutions on the number of papers. I don't have a slide for that. I just talk about it further. The number of papers published by these institutions. And you can see, I remember one of them, for each scientist, we looked at citations for each one of the scientists, each one. This was, I can't pronounce the name of homology, the eye doctors. I'm pronouncing right? Okay, okay. And this is basically, although this is a research institution, it turned out to be a hospital at the end of the day. 0 publications by each and every scientist in the last 4 years in the study or something. Some other institutions, you can see mine was republishing pretty hard. And the rest, 1, 0, 1, 0. Lot of zeros. If you flip the book, I had it on my desk for a long time. Flip the book and you'll see zeros passing by. That's why I'm saying that research institutions are not necessarily a blessing, because there can be problems. There are a lot of efforts to reform education. There was a report that was issued yesterday. You said about the Science Forum, World Economic Forum, and that Egypt enjoys number 148 out of 148 in primary education. But there are a lot of efforts to primary education by the government. Private education is actually the way that most people do. The young Egyptians who are here were trained in Egypt, were educated in Egypt, because people are doing this, I would say it this way, despite the government. We decided that we will look at, to measure the S&T performance, we'll look at the allocated expenditures and human resources and levels of science education and training, measurement of activities leading to technological innovation. We look at the publications, patents, and input of society. Again, this is the cycle. Basic science, applied research, technology, and then product development. And this is how we measure them. This is what we call the 4P cycle. We thought that we would use it without, we thought that we actually would benefit from the science decade in moving forward in these 4 stages. And we thought that by having international cooperation, instead of having been in this stream, we move forward. And there are direct and indirect impacts from international cooperation. We thought that international cooperation would help us. It does to a certain extent. Not quite. This is from Economists magazine. They did a study on biotechnology, called it Blooming Biotechnology. And they compared developing countries on the number of publications on biotechnology in 1991 and 2002. And you can see South Korea, Egypt was there on that scale. Same countries, patents, and they were stopping parts and medical biotechnology. Okay, so again, a disconnect between basic research and applied research. We emphasized that public funding for basic research, we didn't have a mechanism for public funding. We have an Academy of Sciences. You haven't had but I'm no want to say that in public. The reason we have problems, I'm like to be here. The reasons we have problems in scientific research is exactly that. This is my opinion. We looked at possible venture capitals for public technology, and perhaps if we have prototypes, investment banks are coming in and but this was wishful thinking. This is an OECD report on the R&D expenditures for various countries. Actually, Israel has 4.8%, and this was, I think, 2005. Just to gauge, our number is 0.2%. It is not that much different now. 0.2% of the gross domestic product is spent on scientific research. So our objective is to develop R&D, contribute to economy, work towards a knowledge-based society, develop infrastructures and mechanisms to stimulate R&D, clearly establish vision and mission for R&D. We wanted to develop the ecosystem. We have gained all of this insight from the studies of institutions that we have. And we commissioned a study to study models of management of science and technology in different countries, the governance models. And we started to work on developing linkages, understanding the industry. We established a fund with IMC, which is the Industrial Organization Center for Alumni Lecture, just to get money into industry, not from industry, into industry. And we had some national initiatives. Then we expected to restructure science and technology like the government system in Egypt. And create venues for R&D funding and create knowledge centers and have measurable economic indices for R&D. When we did that exercise of infrastructure, the human sources, the scientific institutions, the research centers, it was a positive exercise. I was impressed. There was a strong infrastructure, but there were problems in the defined strategy. Problems in funding, problems in human resources and governance. And there are a tendency to provide consultations to the industry rather than develop new solutions. There are some studies rather than new solutions. We studied the models of management of science and technology in developed nations, fast developing nations, developing nations like Pakistan and came up with a report. The basic results, the most important thing is that you have to have a strong political commitment. And we like the model from Japan. Japan has something called STDF, Council for Science and Technology Policy. And we adopted that model, Council for Science, Technology and Policy. Consists of 8 ministers in the cabinet in Japan and 8 scientists. So we actually created the Higher Council of Science and Technology, and we put also the same thing, 8 ministers. We tweaked it a little bit, put 5 scientists and 3 from the business community. It was strange, I can tell you. I attended all of the meetings of the High Council of Science, chaired by the Prime Minister. First 3 or 4 meetings, these people did not know why they are sitting in the same room together. Ministers didn't know why they're there, and the scientists didn't know what to ask for, to talk about. It was awkward for the first 3 or 4 meetings. But then it moved forward. Last meeting was September 20th, 2010. And the High Council of Science and Technology should have been renewed right about the time when the revolution started. I'm not sure that political will is there. It's not clear. So anyway, important how this strong commitment. In some countries, they have adopted laws to support the transformation. We were not there yet. We worked on laws, but on a law for science and technology. But again, the revolution stopped us from doing that. The basic idea is to be able to use. We were having that discussion right now about MIST. And this is an MIT funded for various nations. The big problem is you cannot use the government funds outside of Egypt. Simply cannot. There has to be a law that allows MIST to happen between Egypt and MIT. There has to be a law. Right now, it is impossible. We're having that discussion just now. Unless private sector contributes to that fund, it cannot be coming. So we need to move over that. So the restructuring that we did was basically to create a clear funding mechanism, organization like NSF, and to have political involvement. So these were the 2 messages that we were able to implement. We did implement those. We were not quite thorough with implementing the law, but it was on the table. Political movement through the High Council of Science and Technology, and funding mechanisms through STDF, which was initially planned to be modeled on NSF. But at the end of the day, we actually modeled it on DFK in Germany. If you can speak German, you can pronounce this around the word FG. Anyway, this is the prime funding agency in Germany. And the Germans helped us a lot, actually, to say that, in creating this study. Also, we looked at the industry needs. We met with stakeholders in government institutions, NGOs, loan organizations, research needs. Created linkages and understanding, and we had some of them participate in research. We wanted to develop a clear vision and well-defined mission, create national strategy. With a simple reorganization, smooth information flow. And we clearly wanted to rebrand science and technology. And we decided that basic research has to be always government funded. People who have not lived in Egypt will not understand the second statement funding will run because the research institutions are allocated a budget based on functions. So the funding, they call it Chapter 1, which is salaries, Chapter 2, running costs, Chapter 3, investments, and so on. And you can always see for all research institutions, Chapter 1, which is salaries, chapter 3 may or may not be launched depending on the organization. But definitely, in all government-funded research institutions, universities, even government ministries, very small funding for running expenses, expenditures, paper, pencil, going to conferences, gas for cars, or these run expenses, nearly zero for all governmental institutions, not only research institutions in Egypt. So we wanted to address that issue. We consider venture capitalist models, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. So we want to have a government system conducive for research and development, fund-based research, encourage private sector investment in science and technology, encourage universities to act as incubators. And this is the system when we started. Ministry of Scientific Research, Academy of Science. Don't ask me questions about this. Supreme Council for Research Centers, that heads the research centers. Supreme Council for collaborating between research centers and universities. And they have a consultation fund. This was the structure of scientific research in Egypt. What we proposed and was done was create a Supreme Council, a Higher Council for Science and Technology, chaired by the Prime Minister with the 8 ministers. Ministry of State for Science and Technology, and to this, there are 2 organizations, the Science Academy and Science and Technological Development Fund, STDF, which will be the NSF-like organization for the funding. And these dotted lines are the relationships between the various organizations and real action lines where the public sector contributes to information to this black box here, which is the ministry and the research institutions. But the vision has to be set by this Higher Council for Science and Technology. This is vision and the resources. All the Higher Council was to develop strategic planning, vision, mission, and priorities for SNT, approve national SNT plan, approve SNT ethical standards, and this is important for people working in biology. Improve SNT governance system and ensure sustainability and funding, evaluate SNT current status, adjust laws and regulations to maintain science and technical progress. STDF, the Science and Technology Development Fund, ensure funding of scientific research and technology development, enhance the innovative capabilities, support the complete cycle of innovation, support the publication of SNT data and information, and implement the continuous indicate assessment of science and technology indicators that affect the recovery. The role of academic of science has been vision for us to follow scientific trends, perform studies to participate in science planning, review basic science status in the country, award state prizes, state science prizes, and to have an overview of the reform in science education. And we believe that a complete restructuring of the academy is required. This is where we failed. The first step we failed. We were not able to reform the academy. The Prime Minister and the Minister of Science and Technology and a few other ministers felt that it is a political matter that they didn't want to go through at that time, 2007. They were happy with creating a Higher Council of Science and Technology, and they were happy with creating STDF. cooperation, you can work on it with them, forget it. In hindsight, that was a big mistake. If you're going to do a restructuring, do it once and for all, at the right time, and everything is safe. The academy is a big bureaucracy, there are 2,500 people here. Please don't ask me what they're doing. And there are intense practices. You can see that from the way that science prizes are awarded. There are intense practices in the Academy of Science. This is the first thing that, perhaps the major thing that we had a problem in our plan for restructuring, that we didn't go for the Academy at the same time. Again, this was a political decision. I don't know if they were right or not, but this was one of the reasons the plan was not fully implemented. The other thing that was not quite approved by the Prime Minister was informal science education. I believe that in a country like Egypt, where the primary education is not what it should be, we can do something good for the children with the informal science education. You were talking about something like that. Here in Boston, we have a science museum, and in Washington, D.C., there are a lot of Smithsonian, Air and Space Museum, and what have you. But actually, these are extensive exercises. There is one that I like most. Again, I was educated here, so my background is to try to simulate the United States in Israel. This is what I wanted. But again, in Germany, they have a small science museum in Bremen. It's very nice. And it is what the science museum should be. The science museum here in Boston has changed its vision and became a recreation center in addition to producing science or presenting science. One Bremen, low cost, the whole thing costs $17 million, which is what, $24 million or something like that. And the running costs is $4 million a year. And these are affordable numbers. And the number of exercises they have for the children was actually extremely large. So that is the model that I wanted to promote. Informal science education through science museums. Have National Geographic in Arabic, what did that. Discovery in Arabic, and a few other ideas for informal science education. The Prime Minister decided that he would have money for that. He wants to put money into funding research rather than that. Okay, and everything, that's fine. But I still think that this is something that can be useful in informal science education. So we accepted the restructuring. We felt political support, even though they were not able to restructure the academy, but they felt it's the first time that the Prime Minister every 3 months would sit and hear about science and technology. It happened to be that the Prime Minister was a professor of engineering at Cairo University, previously, that is. But it was designed for any Prime Minister. But again, since the revolution, there has been no need for the High Council of Science and Technology. Okay. I'm sorry. That's this. Anyway, the plan of action, restructuring of science and technology governance, national initiative of Higher Council came up with the national priorities for science and technology. We, STDF, we had calls for renewable energies, basic research. We had a call to develop Egyptian wind turbine with Egyptian technology. We had calls for water resources. We had agricultural calls. We have a problem with hepatitis C. We had a call for research. We spent a significant amount of money. As the director of STDF, the amount of money that was given to me by the government, I felt, although it's a small amount of money, we're talking $200 million a year, I felt that the capacity of the system to do credible research, money well invested was just about right. The amount of money was just about right. I didn't want to spend money on something that is not credible. So I didn't feel, as a director of funding agency, I didn't feel that there were lack of funds. Not difficulty, but it was never, since creating STDF, never a question of money. And it is the capacity of institutions who need to do something about it. We tried, last year I was the father that we tried to do capacity building grants. We would give research institutions 10 to 15 million pounds just to build the labs. Plus the research grants that can be 1 to 5 million pounds depending on the initiative. Basic plan was 1 million pounds for each research project, but if you go for the national plans, you can go up to 5 million pounds for the project, which is a lot of money which was spent on essentially, and this was the change of mindset. Money spent on researchers rather than on equipment. This was a major change in thinking. The Academy would spend money on equipment while we spend money on science. And that's a big thing. The next step was human resource development, expand young scientists, critical math, encourage international interactions with science decade, community grants. We tried not to have brain drain, but rather we go for brain circulation. We don't mind that you guys come here, but come back again. Brain circulation. Circle going back and forth, which is good. Chairs of excellence, plus development packages, which is what we refer to in American labs. We had the Higher Council and came up with the national projects, renewable energies, dissemination, food and agriculture, biomedical and technology sciences, information and communication technology. Some, there was a basic need for this meeting. Some were influenced by the strength of the Minister of the Higher Council. So for instance, information and communication technology would just as well as good users of that technology. They don't have to be drivers for it. But the Minister of Communication is a strong person in the Higher Council. So this is what we got. But anyway, this is what life is about, so we can accept it together. Funding, established STDF. We had international cooperation agreements. Actually, I was telling Mustafa that this year we have an agreement between Egypt and the US for $8 million each side. So the Academy Research Fund will come between Egypt and the US for $16 million. STDF will pay $8 million to the Egyptian and NSF, sometimes NIH in the US. That fund is managed by the State Department. It's not NSF, it is State Department money, NSF or NIH or whatever we manage the money. It is State Department money. I'll talk about a little bit more. Then we have an initiative for formal education, science and history, and science history museums, marine oceanography institutes. We had nice plans. That part was not approved by the government. I'll talk about this. This is what we wanted to do at STDF. This area here is where you have what you call the death valley. Scientists do a lot of work and they're very comfortable in going to conferences and publishing papers. Some of the scientists do applied research and do really develop intellectual property. We get patents. But to get a prototype that can be useful for industry, all over the world there is a problem here. In the United States or in the West, they have developed a pull model that is industry will try to get this, and the demand is here. The demand pulls these innovations out of the lab into industry. We thought that we're not there yet, and we should develop a push model to cross this death valley here. We were thinking, we were just at the point of developing this, to have a technology venture management company with a partner of the US. This is from the University of Texas. And I had a meeting with the philanthropist who gave me $200,000 on January 15, 2011. And we agreed to develop this company, and we would put $100 million in. The revolution was January 28th, it's not 28th, 2000. So we were about, the idea was to spend the money. STDF will be funding basic research and applied research. This technology venture management company will develop 4 companies for each of the technologies. Then, when they are ready, we will sell those IPOs and get rid of them. Our role is over. Then they can live within the society, whichever way the economics will take them. That would be creating value for the economy, creating value through the funding that we were allowed to do at STDF. You can feel my opinion of the revolution from this discussion. We were lucky that we had actually USAID and DFK doing international assessments of STDF. We actually, based on the USAID assessment, we got $20 million from them. And we had our own internal assessment. We felt that the environment was not yet. There were constraints, governance, human resources, there was a great cycle of innovation, and the mindset, the resistance to the change. This was felt clearly going forward. In many ways, many of the steps that we have taken, they went back on after the revolution. Particularly that High Council. We don't see any reason why any of the presidents or prime ministers did not call for that meeting. Democratically elected or not democratically elected, none of them tried to have that High Council function, not to this day. And I know that all the ministers during that period of time, that each and every one of them sent to the President's office trying to recreate Prime Council in 10 or 11 years. Okay. At that time, again, the mindset was not helpful, and we felt that this requires law changes. We needed to raise awareness. Policies had to be changed. The law, we had committees working on the law, but we just didn't have time to do that. I was director of STDF from beginning February 2008, which is the date it was created. And I left the job in May 2009. But now they have a good director. This is the 4th director. They started 1 month ago. You met with him. And he's a good person. And I think we will continue to move forward. So it's still investment in technology development. We'll continue to have its role as a change agent. This is the most important thing. This was the first time in Egypt's history that research funding was based on merit rather than on who your connections are. Okay, this is the basic, most important difference between as the academy used to do money funding before that. So this is the basic difference, and I think it continues to do so. I'm happy with current way of this data. And we have a lot of data that there is actually measurable. He was telling me, I met him. This has been a long trip, so I probably met him a month ago, which is right before he left Egypt. And he was telling me that he was happy that the initiatives that we started are actually starting to return intellectual property into STDF. And his problem was how to take the money in, not the Ministry of Finance taking the money. It's another way of doing business in the government in Egypt. Lesson learned. When you do a restructuring, do a complete restructure. Do not leave the academy for future restructure. The old guard, again, we had a minister of administrative development, like how to develop the government into an e-government or whatever you want. They had oversight on how things, any restructuring in the government, he had oversight. And he told me that one of the previous presidents of the academy called him when he knew that we were thinking of restructuring the academy. And he said, if you do anything to the academy, as a old one, 80-some, maybe now 90-some years old, I will stand in front of the academy, take off all my clothes, get gas, put it on myself, and we'll have a big fire in front of me. And this is as much resistance, and he was serious. So, whatever they developed 50 years ago, you cannot mess with that. I found that in Egypt, at least, I don't know if other developing countries, it is very hard to kill an organization. It is very hard to, I mean, when we were walking down here, you said that in my time at MIT there were certain departments that are not there anymore. This is unheard of, unthinkable in Egypt. This mentality has to change. The ecosystem It was about to change. I feel that. I feel there is evidence to that. But you have to have a political will, and if you start, go all the way. And the last thing, do not have a revolutionized your restructure. I think this model can be applied. I was at the World Science Forum in Brazil last November, and I'm seeing many developing countries working in that direction. Having something like the Higher Council, having something funding agency like STDF. Nobody's talking about the role of the academy. What we were thinking of is to have the academy as an NGO rather than a governmental body. These functions that we have listed for it are functions of an NGO. And that's the big question, the big hurdle, and I believe all looking in many ways. Perhaps someday we'll complete with restructuring, maybe. Questions?
Open the floor for a few questions.
I still have the same question about one of the major challenges in developing countries in general is getting the information on the current status to base your data on how we're going to do in the future. So the question about what we consider or who we consider as scientists, how do we get our information or collect the information? Was it easy to collect the information? Because I know that there is no much transparency in the government in general. So can you tell us about what was the resources you got your information from?
You can see what I based my studies on. You can see that I based my studies on international reports, UNESCO report, NSF report, and so forth. And there is a disconnect between the numbers. The 90,000 researchers is a true number for the number of researchers. Depends on how you define who's the researcher was. But actually, UNESCO filters that down to 10,000 something. The difference is what they call full-time equivalents. So a researcher at university depends on how much time and he's teaching and how much he's doing research. So I'm not an expert on that. But okay, so the numbers filtered down, the 90,000 of the government official number, or whatever. Was it 90 or 70? 98, okay. And filtered down to 10,700 or something. So the thing is to be consistent. The trends are the most important. Number of cited papers is increasing very much. And I'm using resources, number of cited papers, I'm using NSF data up to 2014. Patents, yes, patent processes. But again, it is no, the patents are not in the NSF data. The patents are also in this report. The trends are clear. My feeling, after going through that experience, is that we have certain strategic advantages in Egypt, and there are possibilities of moving forward. Really about that impact. There are too many hurdles, but the most important is whoever is in power, are they ready? Do they want this to happen or not? This is the big question. I felt during the period of Ahmed Nazif's time that he had the power and he had the will to make that happen. Was it a person, or was it an institution behind him? The that leaves time to judge. So we will find out later. But at that point in time, there was the political will to make that change.
He was the first prime minister from research background. Most of the others was like economy. It comes from like economy, economic.
Mustafa Khalil Mustafa Khalil was a professor of engineering. Atif Abeid was a professor of management, but they became a professor. So there, Yusuf Wadi, he wasn't the prime minister, he was the vice minister. He's one of the reasons why 43% of research is agriculture, because he developed a unique system, and he was able to cross that death valley with agricultural research. He is one of the people you can measure directly the impact of his time in office. When he started as Minister of Agriculture in 1982, by the time he left sometime in 2001 or something, the produce per down for each and every thing, wheat, cotton, fruit, what have you, more than quadrupled, each of them. He had used technology and was able to get that technology into the field. A lot of people don't like him because of it.
When I think about engaging the industry into this research and technology process, you think the industry in Egypt is partly a local one, is kind of a family business system. I think the international companies are a clear developed system. So approaching those should be a bit different. Can you tell us more about who responded more to your position of asking for help and engagement? Was it easy?
It varies. While you were asking the question, a few examples. We had a nanotechnology center that I'm not sure what it is right now. I don't think it's on the menu.
I think it's because I used to work in
They have put some money, both sides. I don't know what's going on right now. But I know that I've allocated 50 million pounds to that thing. To Cairo University, for the infrastructure. Microsoft had a technology center. The director of that technology center invited me to a small place, 36 or something. And they like what you see, you cannot exist in the big. Microsoft, if they want to be in Egypt, they need to have an ecosystem. They were happy that we're trying to change the ecosystem. The IMC, there were a lot of companies from the Egyptian industry who were ready, as long as we're funding, were ready to, particularly in the pharmaceutical industry, were ready to go for it. And we had, just before I left the announced that, a program called Faculty of Factory, where could send a faculty member to spend a semester in the factory. We pay for it. Industry has another 20%, we pay 50%. With a clear objectives. The idea is to get two things. First of all, people in the industry understand what the faculty are doing across that barrier. The other is for the faculty member to understand what the industry is facing. Maybe he will come up with some ideas that he can study in his lab later on. Again, this was 2010 that we announced it, perhaps maybe 2011. Exactly. This was around December 2010, exactly. Never fulfilled. So we're trying to get things going. but the political structure of the country changed.
Any other questions?
Very related question to comments. When we measure publications, do we look at the total, or do we classify them into international papers, locally published?
The number of papers we produce is much larger than what we follow. These are the papers that are cited. It doesn't have to have a high impact factor, but they are cited by our researchers. And this is what NSF has used.
I have a question. So you talked about like restructuring of a government, like the STDF, a government fund that does not have a specific area of research that is focused on, which is sort of kind of similar to NSF. But doing research here in the landscape for research funding includes a lot more than the NSF. It includes like research funding from other departments, Department of Energy, Department of Commerce, or other defense agencies. So my question to you is through this restructuring plan, was there like a component for restructuring different ministries, different departments like agriculture, or water resources, or health, like the health ministry, to include their own research funding programs that only focus on the issues that are critical to those departments?
That model is unique to the United States. Various ministries research. Again, we studied a lot of times, so I will just go that way. Actually, in the United States, the prime funding agency is not NSF, it's the NIH. And all others are involved with these two organizations, so actually it's two organizations if you look at the picture. At one point in time, partly because I'm an engineer, I don't know what you guys do by the client. I don't understand what you're doing. But partly because of my US background, at the beginning we proposed an NIH and NSF organization, right? They didn't see reasoning, or try to make a case for it. They didn't see the reasoning for the organizations. At least, maybe later on, things develop.
But NIH has its own research center as well, so it's sort of, Marcus called the host kind of engulfed into the funding agency as well. Because it has its own research.
That's the model that we're trying to avoid. We're purposefully trying to avoid, because at one point in the history of science and technology in Egypt, the academy owned research institutions. And we wanted to have these institutions independent and on a long-term objective. We wanted to put performance indicators for each one of them, and we wanted to be able to fund them based on these performance indicators, and or kill them and they're not functioning. And that ophthalmology thing, I wanted to become a hospital for Ministry of Health, other than a research center. It is not a research center. So this is not an opinion, this is fact, data that tell us that. But again, killing an institution in Egypt is very hard. I don't know if that is true elsewhere in developing countries, but we can talk about our experience in Egypt. It's virtually impossible to kill an institution. While this is common practice, even within my team, even you can see that everywhere. Again, when Mustafa introduced me, I work in Rotordynamics, and the god of Rotordynamics in the 90s was a Danish guy. My business lab in 1993, 1994, the Danish government decided not to fund that lab and get it down because they had a plan to go into information technology at the time. So then the lab didn't fit. It's still valid, it's work, but it didn't fit. It was a shock for us to see that shut down because this is the culture of the company. But apparently this is good practice. Some place doesn't fit with your strategy and your plan, which is separate. And it applies to science as to anyone else.
How about like creating new organizations? You mentioned creating a new NGO or something parallel to the academy of science.
STDF is a new organization. It is a governmental organization. And we were creative and creative. When I left, the total number of employees we were handling probably around 3,000 projects, or proposals at least, and running maybe 400, 500 projects. The total number of employees when I left was 28 people. None of them was a de facto government employee. The vice system were they on a contract basis. The new director is telling me this is harder nowadays. But we did create an environment that was not a usual government environment. For those of you who have lived in Egypt and understand what the government environment is. Yes, I wanted the academy to become an NGO. I wasn't able to kill the academy. I'm sorry, I lost that. Yes, it would have been nice if I found an NGO. Academies of sciences in the United States are NGOs. Sciences and engineering. There is something called, I don't know how to translate this, but it is that. And this is an old institution. This is 200 years old. Science. Can anyone translate this? Okay.
This is only burned down.
This is not true. It isn't burned down. Don't believe anything in the video.
Certainly.
It consists of 100 people. This was developed by the French when they invaded Egypt in 1805 or whatever year that was. And it's been there for that long. Only 100 people in it. And I felt that this can be developed to become to do a role of academy. This is my own feeling. And would have had a lot less resistance than just to the academy. Okay, I told you that Amr is the 4th director of STDF. 3rd director of STDF left this job to become president of the academy. So he must have thought that this is moving up the scale. So I think this tells you where it is right now, where the situation is right now. So maybe the academy won't have taken it.
So maybe we take one last question from Said and then.
So I just have a quick question. So is there any direction now in Egypt to restructure universities in terms of improving the facilities in the universities? So I think now there is no university in Egypt that has a good facility that can allow researchers to perform their research. And maybe also don't have access to more to the database like living in So yeah, there will be like a fund from the STDF, but people can do you need like university facilities? The city just gives you like access to the journals. You don't have tons of this need. So, is there any direction now we need to do this?
You really want to answer?
I have been on here for one life.
You realize that yesterday there was a 6-hour blackout in Egypt, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so there are other priorities right now. But there are people who know how to get funding. I consider my laboratory, Rotordynamics at Cairo University. This is a governmental institution, we state developed. We have patents. I'm writing another one right now. There are 4 patents coming out of that lab, and we publish about it. But I'm unique in a sense that I know how to get funding. Not many people know how to get funding. But there are many people who are like me who know how to get funding. So there are faculty members who know how to do it. There was one point in time when we had election of university presidents. I personally am against that because it produces the worst of us. And that was hurting a lot of universities. So we have to, first of all, agree on policies, on what we want to do, and then there are other priorities right now than what you're thinking of. But if you go back to Egypt, then you can find a way to get funding, but you need to know how. But right now, there are other problems, even at universities, there are other problems in the country, but even at the universities, there are other problems, structural problems that need to be resolved. The independence of the universities is one of them. How do you manage university and government government?
I was not. So I just thought my point is that we don't have a university that has like instruments that.
There are a lot of places.
I mean, university facility, like center for university has a lot of facilities.
Yeah. Okay.
We don't have something that
Let's get into tech back. First of all, one of the comments you made about having access to journals. Up to 2010 and maybe 2011, there was access to all journals, complete, and this was paid by the ministry, not by universities. All universities and research centers could access journals. I think it stopped in 2012 or something like that. This is one thing. The other thing, I would oppose what you just said, that having a center where you have people who are good at a particular place. You cannot build vertically, you have to build horizontally.
I think he needs a core facility. Like, we use core facilities in Canada.
Yeah, but you're in a different environment. We cannot do that. We have to go horizontally and support people where they are. Not get all the good people in one place. Then we are not developing the country.
I think he talks about equipment.
There are a lot of, again, it is not a question of money. It is not, in the last, even after the revolution, they get more money. I used to get 200 million, I think they get 300 or 400 million now. And they give back the money to the government. They don't spend the whole money. It is not a question of money. It is a question of system and the way you're doing it and the political will for it. What you want to do.
But there is also the problem of human resources. Like even if you have the funds, you don't have the people who, or the scientists who can request these funds and produce, or work on research.
Not true. You have people who publish in science in Cairo University.
Oh, we do?
Yes, but how many?